Imagine buying your wife a lottery ticket as a sweet surprise, only for her to win $10 million and kick you out of her life. That's exactly what happened to me until karma came knocking. My name is Daniel Cooper, and I never thought my marriage would end over a slip of paper. For 15 years, my wife and I shared everything, our struggles, our bills, and our dreams. Life wasn't easy. I worked 2 jobs just to keep the lights on, while she often reminded me of the vacations, houses, and luxuries we couldn't afford. Still, I loved her. Every Friday, after paying bills, I'd buy her a small treat, a coffee, flowers, or sometimes a lottery ticket. Maybe luck will smile on us one day, I'd joke, handing it to her with a smile. She'd laugh and tuck it away, never really expecting anything. But one night fate played a cruel trick. I handed her a ticket just like always, kissed her cheek, and went to bed. The next morning, I woke to her scream. She stood in the kitchen, shaking, the ticket clutched in her hands. Her voice trembled. "Daniel, we won $10 million. For a moment, I felt like all our hardships had finally ended. Tears burned my eyes as I hugged her. We laughed, we shouted, we even danced in the kitchen like kids. But the joy didn't last. By evening, her smile had changed. It wasn't joy anymore, it was power. She looked at me differently, like I was unnecessary. She stopped calling me honey. She took calls in the other room. She whispered to people I didn't know, and then, just 3 days later, the hammer dropped. A man in a suit knocked on my door, holding a folder. "Mr. Cooper," he said coldly, "your wife has filed for divorce." I thought it was a joke. After all our years, after all my sacrifices, she was leaving me for money, but it got worse. Much worse, because in her greed she had forgotten one thing. I was the one who bought that winning ticket. I remember sitting on the edge of the bed that night, staring at the divorce papers like they were written in another language. My wife, my partner, had turned into a stranger overnight. When she came into the room, she wasn't even ashamed. She tossed her hair back, smirked, and said, "Don't take it personally, Daniel. We've been broke for too long. I need more than this life with you, and now I finally have it." Her words cut deeper than any knife. "More than this life with you?" I wanted to shout, to remind her who stood by her side when we couldn't pay rent, who sold his car so she could finish school, who worked nights so she could chase her dreams. But she didn't care. The money had replaced me. The next days blurred into a nightmare. She stopped cooking for us, stopped sleeping in the same bed, stopped even pretending to care. She opened new bank accounts, spoke to lawyers, and bought designer clothes delivered straight to the house. Once I walked into the living room and found her on the phone laughing. "Yes, I'll be single soon. 10 million in my name and I'll finally be free." She didn't even bother lowering her voice. The betrayal wasn't just about money. It was about everything we had built, every promise, every vow. And yet, through the fog of pain, one truth kept burning in my mind. She had no idea the lottery. Rules didn't match her greedy plan, because the ticket wasn't hers, it was mine. My purchase, my ID, my signature, and when the state confirmed the claim, the name that would appear wasn't hers at all. It would be mine. The next week felt like a movie where I was the villain in my own home. She paraded around like a queen, already spending money she didn't even have in her hands yet. Credit cards arrived with huge limits. Shopping bags filled every corner of the house, jewelry boxes, designer shoes, perfumes stacked on the dresser. When I asked how she was paying for it all, she smirked and said, "Credit companies love rich women, Daniel. Don't worry, you wouldn't understand." It wasn't just her spending, it was her arrogance. She started hosting her friends, bragging loudly about her 10 million, while I sat silently in the corner, invisible in my own home. One night, she brought a lawyer over, a slick man in an expensive suit who shook my hand like he was already the winner. "Mr. Cooper," he said with a fake smile, "your wife is prepared to settle generously. She'll allow you a fair share after the divorce." Fair share of my ticket. I clenched my jaw so hard it hurt, but I didn't argue. Not yet, because every time she flaunted her fake victory, every time she whispered into her phone about her new life, I reminded myself of the truth. I had the receipt from the gas station. I had the credit card statement. My signature was on the back of the ticket. The win wasn't hers, and the law was on my side. Still, I let her celebrate. I let her friends toast with champagne in my living room. I let her laugh about how she'd soon be rid of poor old Daniel. Why? Because I wanted her to fall from the highest peak of arrogance straight into the pit she dug for herself. I wanted her betrayal to taste as bitter as it felt to me. And when the time came, she wouldn't just lose me. She'd lose everything. By the end of the month, my wife had completely transformed into someone I didn't even recognize. She started introducing herself as if she were already a millionaire. "Oh, we'll be moving soon," she bragged to the neighbors. "I'll have my settlement money by next week. $10 million, all mine." I watched her paint fantasies of mansions, luxury cars, and vacations to places we once only dreamed about. But in her version of the dream, I wasn't there. I was erased. One evening, she sat across from me at the dining table, her diamond earrings, catching the light. She looked me dead in the eye and said, "Daniel, you'll get nothing once this is finalized. You don't deserve a cent. You've held me back long enough." I didn't answer. I didn't flinch. I only stared at her, memorizing every cruel word, every smirk. Inside, though, my heart was pounding, not with fear, but with anticipation, because her arrogance had blinded her completely. She didn't realize she was making promises with money. That wasn't legally hers. She thought the world was at her feet. She thought I was powerless, but I had every receipt, every proof, every law in my corner. I stayed quiet. I let her celebrate. I let her climb higher and higher, because when the fall came, it would be devastating. That night, as she poured herself another glass of champagne and laughed on the phone about her freedom, I slipped into my study and opened a folder I had been preparing. Inside was everything: the gas station receipt, the signed ticket copy, the purchase log, all in my name, and soon, when she walked into court to claim her fortune, she would realize the cruelest truth of all: the jackpot she betrayed me for never belonged to her in the first place. The day of the hearing arrived, and she walked into the courthouse like a queen entering her palace. Her heels clicked against the marble floor, echoing her arrogance with every step. Dressed in an expensive new outfit, ironically bought on credit, she smiled at everyone as though the case was already won. Her lawyer strutted beside her, carrying a thick stack of papers. "Don't worry," I overheard him say. "The judge will see you as the rightful owner of the winnings. We'll argue marital property." She nodded, tossing her hair back. "Perfect. Daniel won't stand a chance." I stayed quiet. I carried no designer bag, no flashy suit, just my calm demeanor and a folder tucked neatly under my arm. The same folder that held the truth she had ignored. When the session began, her lawyer rose dramatically. "Your Honor, my client, Mrs. Parker, is here to claim her share of the recently won lottery ticket. She has been married to Mr. Parker for 15 years, and under marital property laws, the winnings are rightfully hers as well." My wife gave me a smug smile, as if the victory was already sealed. But then it was my turn. I stood slow and steady and handed the judge my folder. Inside, the original purchase receipt from the gas station, time-stamped with my card details, the photocopy of the ticket I had signed. And finally, the state's official confirmation slip, with my name listed as the sole claimant. The courtroom grew silent. The judge adjusted his glasses, scanning through the papers. Then he looked up and asked, "Mrs. Parker, do you have any evidence that you purchased this ticket?" For the first time, her smile faltered. She stammered, "Well, it was in our house. He brought it home." The judge's tone sharpened. "That is not the same as purchasing it. The law is very clear on this matter." I didn't gloat. I didn't smirk. I only stood still, letting the weight of the truth crush her, and in that moment the roles flipped. She wasn't the queen anymore. She was just a desperate woman who had gambled her marriage on greed and lost everything. The judge leaned back in his chair, the silence in the room so heavy it felt like thunder waiting to strike. My wife's lawyer cleared his throat, trying to recover the situation. "Your Honor," he began, "even if my client did not physically purchase the ticket, she is entitled under community property law. The marriage bond—" The judge cut him off, firm and unimpressed. "Marriage bond does not override the identity of the purchaser. The lottery requires proof of purchase, and Mr. Parker has provided it. Unless you can produce a receipt or ticket in your client's name, this argument holds no weight." The words landed like hammers. My wife shifted in her seat, her face turning pale beneath layers of makeup. She whispered frantically to her lawyer, her hands trembling. "Do something! Fix this!" But her lawyer's confident smirk had vanished. He knew they were cornered. Watched it all unfold, expressionless. For weeks she had paraded her new life in front of me, treated me like dirt, laughed at my silence. And now? That same silence was her undoing. The courtroom audience, family, neighbors, even strangers who had come out of curiosity, leaned forward, sensing the drama. They had all heard rumors about her arrogance, about the husband she had discarded. Like trash. Now they were witnessing the truth. I didn't need to speak. My evidence spoke louder than any words could. The judge finally turned to her directly. "Mrs. Parker, greed is not a legal argument. Unless you can present credible proof, this case is close to resolution." Her eyes widened. She wasn't the confident millionaire anymore. She was a gambler caught bluffing at the wrong table. And, deep inside, I felt the cold satisfaction of revenge beginning to bloom, because she hadn't just lost the money. She was about to lose her pride, her credibility, and everything she thought she controlled. The courtroom felt frozen in time. The judge tapped his pen against the desk, his eyes fixed on my wife. "Mrs. Parker," he said slowly, "you have had ample opportunity to present evidence. Yet everything before me clearly proves one fact. Your husband, Daniel Parker, is the sole purchaser and legal owner of the lottery winnings." The words hung in the air like a guillotine about to drop. My wife gasped, shaking her head violently. "No, that's impossible. He just bought it for us. We were married. That money belongs to me, too." The judge's voice hardened. "Marriage does not grant automatic rights to assets that are proven to be solely purchased and claimed by one party. And in this case, Mr. Parker's documentation is airtight. The court rules in his favor. He retains full ownership of the winnings." Her scream pierced the silence. "No, this is mine. I deserve this." She slammed her hands on the table, tears mixing with fury, mascara running down her face. The courtroom guards moved closer, ready to step in if needed. I didn't flinch. I didn't even blink. For once, it wasn't me drowning in her cruelty. It was her, gasping, clawing at a dream that was never hers to begin with. Her lawyer tried to calm her down, whispering frantically, "Stop, you're making it worse." But she shoved him away, her voice echoing through the room. "You can't do this to me. You can't take away my future." The judge rapped his gavel sharply. "Enough. Case closed. Mr. Parker, you are dismissed." That sound, the wooden crack of the gavel, wasn't just a ruling. It was the final nail in the coffin of her greed. I stood, collected my folder, and walked out without a word. Behind me, I heard her sobbing, her voice breaking. "Daniel, please, don't do this to me. I need you." But the truth was undeniable. She hadn't needed me when she thought she had millions. She had only needed the money. Now stripped of both, she was left with nothing but regret. And I walked out a free man, rich not just in money, but in justice. As I stepped outside the courthouse, the cool air hit my face like a long-awaited breath of freedom. Reporters gathered, flashing cameras, shouting questions. "Mr. Parker, how does it feel to win not just the lottery, but against your wife in court?" I didn't stop. I didn't answer. I just walked, because this victory wasn't about money. It was about betrayal, about promises broken, about love turned into greed. Behind those walls, my wife's cries still echoed. She had lost everything in one swift moment, not just the fortune she lusted after, but her dignity, her pride, her illusion of control. And for me, I had gained clarity. Sometimes revenge isn't about shouting or fighting or even punishing. Sometimes it's just about letting the truth speak louder than lies. I tightened my grip on the folder, the very evidence that saved me, and whispered to myself, She thought she could buy her future with betrayal, but in the end her price was everything she had. I walked away, not looking back even once, because when someone shows you what greed really looks like, you don't need to fight them anymore. You just let them destroy themselves. And that's exactly what she did. When I walked out of that courthouse with the judgment in my favor, the world felt both heavier and lighter at the same time. Heavier because I was carrying years of betrayal, disappointment, and the hollow echo of a marriage that had just collapsed. Lighter because for the first time in years I wasn't chained to someone who had treated me like an obstacle instead of a partner. I didn't go celebrate with champagne or spend a dime of the winnings that day. No. I drove home in silence, my hands gripping the steering wheel tighter than ever before, my mind replaying every word she had said in the weeks leading up to this moment. You don't deserve a cent. You've held me back long enough. This money is my freedom. I laughed bitterly to myself. Freedom? She had mistaken betrayal for freedom. She had mistaken greed for love, and worst of all, she had mistaken me for a fool. When I reached home, the emptiness of the house was almost unbearable. The furniture, the photos, even the smell of her perfume still lingered in the air, but it all felt tainted. Every memory was now poisoned by the knowledge of what she had done. I sat down in the living room, staring at the wedding picture still hanging on the wall. My younger self smiled in that photo, standing beside a woman he thought would be by his side for life. My chest tightened. I didn't recognize that man anymore. It wasn't just about losing her. It was about realizing that for years I had been blind. Blind to her selfishness, blind to the cracks forming in our marriage, blind to the subtle hints that she valued wealth and status more than the vows we made. The money, it had simply unmasked her. For days after the court ruling, she tried calling me. Dozens of missed calls lit up my phone, her voice filling my voicemail, crying, begging, threatening. One message said, "Daniel, please, I didn't mean it. We can fix this. Just give me another chance." Another was pure venom. "You'll regret this. You think you've won? You're nothing without me." But I didn't answer. Not once. Because by then I understood something crystal clear. Answering her calls would mean stepping back into the same cycle of manipulation that had nearly destroyed me. Instead, I focused on myself. For the first time in years, I asked myself, what do I want? What kind of life do I want to live now that I am free? The money was a blessing, yes, but it wasn't the true reward. The real reward was peace. The kind of peace that comes when you walk away from someone who tried to bury you, and instead you rise stronger than ever. I began planning slowly. I didn't rush to buy a mansion or flashy cars like she probably imagined I would. No, I started thinking about rebuilding my life brick by brick in a way that money couldn't corrupt. And as I sat there, alone in the quiet house, I realized something even deeper. Revenge isn't always about destroying the other person. Sometimes the sweetest revenge is just living well while they crumble under the weight of their own greed. The days that followed weren't easy. Winning in court didn't erase the scars left behind by years of betrayal. It didn't erase the memory of nights I spent working double shifts so she could sleep peacefully, or the mornings I skipped meals so she could have enough. It didn't erase the love I once had for her, a love that now felt like ashes in my chest. At first, I felt lost. What good was winning millions if the person you trusted most had already stabbed you in the back? Money could buy comfort, sure, but it couldn't buy back trust, loyalty, or genuine companionship. But then something unexpected happened. My sister came by one evening, holding a casserole dish in her hands, tears in her eyes. She hugged me tighter than she had in years and whispered, "I'm so proud of you, Daniel. You finally stood up for yourself." Those words hit me harder than any court ruling. For years, I had been the man who stayed quiet, who compromised, who endured. My family had watched me wither under her manipulation, and now they were seeing me stand tall again. Neighbors, too, the very people my wife had bragged to about her upcoming fortune, stopped me on the street. Some offered congratulations. Others admitted they were shocked at how openly she had spoken of throwing me aside. One old friend said she thought money made her invincible, but you showed everyone that truth still matters. Meanwhile, her downfall was swift and merciless. The credit cards she had maxed out, declined, the luxury items she flaunted, repossessed, the lawyer fees, a mountain of debt she couldn't climb, and the people she thought would worship her for her wealth. They vanished when they realized she had nothing left to offer. I heard whispers around town. She had moved into a small apartment, the kind she once scoffed at. The same woman who once said she deserved a mansion now lived in a place with peeling wallpaper and leaky faucets. I should have felt pity. But instead, all I felt was clarity. Because I had learned something vital. She didn't just lose the money. She lost me. And no matter how much she begged, manipulated, or lied, that was something she could never win back. As for me, I started using the winnings wisely. I paid off debts, I secured my future. I donated quietly to causes that mattered to me. Things we had once promised to support together, but she had laughed at because there was no profit in charity. Every dollar I spent wasn't just about building a life. It was about reclaiming the dignity she tried to take from me. Late at night, I would sometimes think back to that moment in court, the way her face collapsed when the judge ruled against her, and I realized something important. That wasn't just the moment I won. That was the moment I was reborn. For the first time in decades, I began to rediscover myself. Without her shadow hanging over me, I finally had space to breathe, to think, to dream again. I started small. I repaired the old house that had once felt like a prison. Fresh paint on the walls, new furniture that reflected my taste, not hers. I created a study lined with books I had always wanted to read, but never had the time for. And every corner of that house began to feel like mine again. I also took time for things I had long neglected. I started walking in the park each morning, listening to the sounds of birds and the laughter of children. For years I had forgotten how healing simple silence could be. It was in those quiet moments that I realized the money wasn't my freedom. I was my own freedom. Yes, the winnings secured my future, but the real prize was reclaiming my identity, the man I had been before greed poisoned my home. As the weeks turned into months, I noticed something remarkable. My health improved, the constant tightness in my chest, the headaches, the fatigue, all of it slowly faded. Stress had been eating me alive, and now it was gone. Friends I hadn't seen in years reached out. Some apologized for not stepping in sooner when they saw how badly she treated me. Others simply wanted to reconnect, now that I wasn't shackled by her constant demands. I welcomed them all, but cautiously. Because one of the hardest lessons I had learned was this: not everyone who smiles at you is your friend, and not everyone who loves you will stay true when temptation comes. I started journaling every night, pouring out my thoughts, my pain, my gratitude. Writing became my therapy. And as I wrote, I began to notice a pattern. Every entry ended with the same truth: peace is priceless. Sometimes I wondered if she ever thought about me. Did she lie awake in that small, shabby apartment, regretting the choices she made? Did she scroll through photos of our life together and realize what she had thrown away? I would never know. And honestly, I didn't need to, because her story was no longer mine to carry. My story had shifted from betrayal to redemption, from loss to rebirth, from silence to strength. And as I sat on my porch one evening watching the sunset paint the sky in gold, I whispered to myself, she thought she took everything from me. But in truth, she gave me back myself. That was the ultimate twist. She didn't destroy me. She freed me. People often ask me, Daniel, do you regret it? Do you regret giving her all those years of your life only for her to betray you in the end? And my answer is always the same. No, I don't regret the years, because those years taught me the most valuable lesson of all. You cannot change who someone truly is when temptation strips away their mask. She showed me her true face when the lottery ticket appeared. And though it broke me at first, I now see it as a blessing. Because without that betrayal, I might have lived the rest of my life blind to her greed. Yes, I lost a wife, but I gained clarity, strength, and peace. And here's the shocking part. Most people don't understand. Money was never the revenge. My silence was, I didn't scream at her. I didn't beg her to stay. I didn't humiliate her publicly. I just let the truth come out, and the truth destroyed her more completely than I ever could. That's the power of patience. That's the power of knowing your worth. Today I live a quiet life. I don't flaunt the winnings. I don't need to. Because real wealth isn't in the bank. It's in waking up every morning without fear, without lies, without betrayal. And to anyone listening right now, let me tell you this. If you ever find yourself betrayed, don't rush for revenge. Let life reveal the truth. Let their greed, lies, and arrogance be the fire that burns them down. Stand firm, gather your strength, and know this. Sometimes the best revenge is simply surviving better than they expected. Because the woman who thought she owned $10 million now owns nothing but regret. And the man she tried to erase, he's still standing, stronger, wiser, unshakable. So I ask you watching my story today, what would you have done if the person you loved most turned against you for money? Would you fight with rage? Or would you let the truth fight for you? The way I did, think about it. Because one day you might face your own betrayal, and when that day comes, remember my story. And remember, sometimes silence is the loudest revenge of all. If you've listened this far, then you already know this story isn't just about money. It isn't just about betrayal. It's about survival. It's about finding your strength when someone you trust the most tries to take everything away from you. I didn't tell this story to brag. I didn't tell it to make you pity me. I told it because maybe, just maybe, someone out there is living through the same kind of betrayal right now. Maybe you're sitting in silence, wondering if you're weak for staying quiet, or if you'll ever get justice. Let me tell you this, you will. It may not happen overnight. It may not even happen the way you expect. But the truth always has a way of coming out, and when it does, the person who wronged you will face consequences they can't run from. I never raised my voice. I never sought to destroy her life. I just let her destroy herself with her own greed. That was enough, and now I live in peace, true peace, something far more valuable than any lottery winnings. So if you take one thing away from my story, let it be this. Don't let betrayal define you. Don't let greed control you, and never underestimate the quiet power of patience, because sometimes the best revenge isn't about winning the argument. It's about winning your life back. If this story shook you, if it made you think, then do me a favor. Like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe, because there are more stories, real stories, that will open your eyes, break your heart, and maybe even heal it. This was my story, a story of betrayal, loss, justice, and rebirth. Now tell me in the comments, what would you do if someone you loved threw you away the moment they thought they didn't need you anymore? I'll be waiting to read your answers. And remember, sometimes silence speaks louder than screams.